In this brief video, I'm going to go through the step-by-step approach I take to class definition. All right, let's get started. First step, step one, give your class a descriptive name. Whenever you're defining a class, it always is a great idea to give it a descriptive name. So if you're inputting data from a field on a screen in a mobile app, call it input field class or something like that. Something that's going to make sense to you when you take a look at this code 6 months later to try to figure out what it was that you did way back then. The more descriptive, the better. Step two, define your attributes. What do I mean by that? Okay, if you remember the example in the text description, I was using basically the recipes and ingredients analogy. So whenever you want to write a program, you want to define what are the ingredients in the recipe, and that would be things like your variables, your constants, any arrays you need to create, any kind of dictionaries you may need to create. These are all attributes of your program, and these are all predefined in your class definition. On to step three. Initialize your properties and variables. There's a lot of things that you may have in a class definition that need to be initialized before they're used. You don't want to leave them sort of arbitrarily set at whatever the computer might come up with when it first turns on. So what you want to do is you want to initialize the settings for those properties and variables within the class definition prior to executing the program, so that this is the first thing that happens when the program launches. Step four, define your behaviors. Okay, a behavior is typically an action. What do you do? What are you doing with the data? Are you inputting two numbers and then adding them together? Are you doing some type of a sort on a bunch of data in an array, etc., etc.? It's usually some type of action that's being taken on the part of your class definition upon the data. So that's what defining your behavior is. And then finally, the last step, step five, instantiate your class. A common mistake that I see a lot of new coding students make is they go through and they do a perfect job of defining the class and all its attributes and behaviors, and then come to me and say, hey, my code doesn't work, why? And I look at it and I notice immediately the first thing they did was they never instantiate the class. And what does that mean? That means they never used the cookie cutter to make a cookie. They designed the most beautiful cookie cutters you could imagine, but they never used them, and that's what instantiating your class does. So in review, step one, give it a great name. Step two, define your attributes. Step three, initialize your properties and variables. Step four, define your behaviors. Step five, instantiate your class. Make a cookie. That's all for now. Good luck.